Ladies and gentlemen, we are happy to be back today for today's edition of the Vote 24 TV online presentation. This is the Khakis Dialogue, and for us, this is a platform that tends to create the atmosphere for dialogue in our country and to ponder those critical questions that we must all answer to be able to lend our hands and expertise to the transformation of Liberia. We are all aware that Liberia is Africa's oldest democracy or republic. And the fact is that it does not measure up to the age in terms of growth and development. And everywhere, meaning Liberia has been making a contribution to ensuring that we push the country to increase her pace in trailblazing new path for growth and development that is going to replenish the years that the locusts have eaten. Before we can have any other panelists on this platform today, we would like to begin by touching on some important issues, but I am deeply concerned, and of course, I've always been concerned about the issue of employment in Liberia. And to me, it is a critical issue. And I want to speak to Liberians no matter where you come from. And I would like to encourage the economists, whether you're in the diaspora or in Liberia, because I cannot understand this issue better than the economists are going to understand. For me, I am a human rights practitioner, and in that regard, I'm concerned about the rights to work. But the rights to work is an economic issue. And when we look at it from the economic perspective, it seems equally scaring as much as it is from the human rights standpoint. Fellow Liberians, we gather at a time when Liberia stands at a critical crossroad, not because of war or political instability, but because of something far quieter but much more dangerous. This is the silent crisis of unemployment. For too long, we have comforted ourselves with official figures that suggests that Liberia's unemployment rate is low, a mere 3 or 4%. But the truth, my friend, is that these numbers are more than they reveal. That beyond every statistics is a story. We saw a few days ago somebody dropped dead, and people on the street were reporting that the person that dropped dead because of hunger. Liberia has always been a generous country. It has always been difficult or almost impossible, out of the generosity of our country, for anybody to drop dead because of hunger. If you live in a community, somebody is going to give you water, somebody is going to give you food to eat. Behind every statistics I said is a story. A young graduate selling trash card on this roadside. A mother farming with her bare hands to feed family. She cannot afford to send to school her kids. We will see skilled mechanic without a shop to work from. A lot of them on the sidewalks. You can go Vartown, Claratown, you can go Ghanansville, or even Macklin Street. These are not isolated cases. They are the heartbeat of a nation in distress. Let us look at this very plainly. Over 80% of Liberians are trapped in the informal economy, hustling from day to day, with working without contract, without benefits, without security. And this has been the case since the poverty reduction strategy was developed, with a very beautiful preamble. 80% of the Liberian workforce is in the informal sector. And one will rationally think that if 80% of the Liberian workforce is in the informal sector, then effort will be made to bring those into the formal economy. If that has not been done, then it is worrisome. For the average Liberian, employment does not mean stability, it means survival. That is the situation in Liberia. Our youth, the backbone of our democracy and the future of our state, face a bleak horizon. Nearly half of all young people are neither in school nor in training, nor in any form of decent employment. Many have simply lost hope that Liberia's promises include them. This is not merely an economic problem, it is a social time bomb. I repeat, this is not merely an economic problem, it is a social time bomb. This is why people like us who struggle in Liberia, who, when reflecting on our past and those things that we engage in the name of saving Liberia, wonder whether it was worth it. We could have died, but we sacrificed for Liberia to be where it is today. We should all put our hands on deck to make sure that Liberia's development is accelerated. This is not merely an economic problem, it is a social time bomb. When a young man cannot find work, when a young woman cannot feed her child, frustration turns to anger and anger to desperation. We have seen this story before in our own painful history. Unemployment feeds poverty, poverty breeds hopelessness, and hopelessness threatens the very peace and democratic gains we have struggled to achieve. Simply, a state cannot be stable when the majority of its citizens live outside the reach of opportunity. Democracy cannot thrive where people must choose between bread and the ballot. It seems that our politicians are happy with these conditions. And let me remind you, these are the very conditions that brought the war. Our politicians are happy with these conditions. When you steal from the people, wait for elections, give them bread, and expect them to vote for you. But I can remind every politician, every policy maker that the Liberian people are not stupid and they have never been. When the economy fails to provide for its citizens, politics becomes the last refuge of survival. The last refuge of survival. Elections then turn from a contest of ideas to a competition for access to job, contracts, and power. In such an environment, the institution of democracy grows weaker, not stronger. The unemployment crisis, therefore, is not only a challenge to our economy, it is a direct threat to our democracy. It erodes trust in government, fuels corruption and patronage, and creates fertile ground for instability and manipulation. The private sector is shrinking. Government is the largest employer. And to be employed in government, you have to bootleg and be a stooge. You have to belong to a political party. You have to strip yourself of all sort of decency and professionalism. That is threatening. Is it worth it to be a person of dignity? Is it worth it to be a person of integrity? Is it worth it to wear a garment of professionalism when all that will bring you is a shrinking space for opportunity to get employed? This crisis did not appear overnight. It is a result of decades of underinvestment in education, weak industrial growth, limited private sector space, and it's in a rural economy still locked in subsistence survival. Our young people are being trained for jobs that do not exist. Every year, we graduate people from the university. Some will go on to do psychology. Some will go on to do sociology. Some will do political science. Some economics. Some public administration. No job. No job. Our economy export raw materials and import finished goods, and in that imbalance, we lose not only value, but jobs. We have less concern for the balance of trade. The promise of growth has not translated into the promise of work. As a result, economic recovery has been jobless, has become jobless growth. economic recovery has become jobless growth. And the gap between the few who have and the many who do not widens every day, every year. If we are serious about safeguarding Liberia democracy, we must start if we are serious about safeguarding Liberia's democracy, we must start by safeguarding the dignity of work, the right to work. We must shift from statistics to solution, from aid independence or aid dependence to enterprise, and from political promises to productive policies. Invest in skills and vocational training so that our youth can compete in agriculture, manufacturing, and digital industries. Let us support small and medium enterprise. Small and medium enterprises are certainly the real engine of job creation. And if we do not develop a strategy and take very serious the implementation of such strategy to empower SMEs, we are still joking. The only time I read analysis from Patrick Mbayo, which suggested that about 90% of the national budget went to recurring costs, salaries, and other payments. And there was no fiscal space to finance policies related to empowering small and medium enterprises. It is important to promote value additions, turning our rubber, timber, cocoa, iron into finished product made in Liberia. This will obviously create more jobs. Just the idea of promoting value addition. I've always said that education is not neutral. And so our education system, like when I observe education in the US, for example, to me, it's just typically a kind of practice ground for supplying the workforce, the labor market. Modernize agriculture. We need to modernize agriculture and rural economies because development that leaves the villages behind will never ever be sustainable. These are not abstract ideas. They are the building blocks of stability, dignity, and democracy itself. We need to reform our education system to match skills with market demands. We cannot build democracy on an empty stomach. We cannot preach peace to the jobless or stability to the hungry. Every unemployed youth is a reminder that Liberia's social contract remains unfulfilled. Every frustrated graduate is a warning signal that our democracy is drifting. But every job created, every young person given a chance to work, to earn, to dream is a vote for peace, a step towards stability, and an investment in the survival of our nation. Let us therefore treat unemployment not as a statistic, but as a national emergency. Because a nation that cannot employ its people cannot sustain its democracy. It is the time to act now, or now is the time to act. The future of Liberia depends on taking action to ensure that our people are employed. It is grossly improper for us to stay back and watch as our nation sink deeper and deeper into a state of paralysis under the weight of unemployment. Politicians and policymakers should begin to narrow their perspective to this critical question of employment and accelerate the pace of intervention in bringing solution to the unemployment crisis and the potential to exacerbate the insecurity in Liberia and the fragility of the state. Let us not sit idly by. I know everybody who wants were instrumental in advocacy in Liberia are basically trying to make ends meet in the diaspora and in Liberia, but it is still critical that we continue to make these kinds of necessary interventions that are going to push our country or project our country as one of those viable economy in the sub-region and improve our economic competitiveness. We cannot ignore Liberia and then pretend that nothing wrong is happening. Just the other day, we had a very distorted analysis of Liberia place in the global peace index without the understanding that Liberia position in the 2025 global peace index was simply as a result of the growing crisis in many regions of the world, which reduce the places of those countries involved in the crisis. Our folks continue to interpret it as Liberia's being well off and taking a leap. That was far from the truth. The reality is that Liberia maintained a relatively steady position while other countries' peace record plummeted below Liberia. We have to make sure that we exercise genuine concern for Liberia and that we are not wallow in political extremities and just engaged in seeking favors from others, when in fact we should be working on promoting our country and ensuring that a better Liberia is realized.